Russia treated distance as armor and depth as protection. For over 3 years, the Kremlin assumed that rear area refineries, the power plants, the command centers, that they were all untouchable. However, that assumption created the illusion of safety. That illusion, however, is now collapsing as Ukraine's deep strikes are reaching further into Russia's industrial core. The drones themselves have ended any sort of illusion that existed and pulled the entire economy of Russia into the war. These strikes on the refineries, on the depots, the command nodes, the export terminals, they're having a direct impact on the war. Command has slowed. Repairs are costing more. Cash flow is tightening, and the war economy is part of the battlefield. Today, the rear is now the front. The safe zone is no longer in existence. Moscow's rear areas are under sustained attack. Operations are being paused. Aggression is getting worse. The Kremlin can no longer defer the economic and military bill. And the other thing that's occurring, though, is something that has Moscow very worried. And that is the Flamingo drones, the incoming Tomahawk missiles. These are going to change the equation of this war. They're going to change how this war is fought. But the best part is that Moscow's nightmare is only just beginning. My name is Jason Smart. I'm a special correspondent for the Kiev Post and a national security advisor. What we see going on inside of Russia is pretty incredible because the Russians try to act like everything's okay, that everything is just fine. However, if we look at what's happening, we know they don't feel that way. We know that they're worried. They are scared. This is something that they had never thought would happen, that Ukraine would take the war to Russia. But today, the war is being fought in Russia. As I've said many times, I think it's a mistake when we refer to the battlefield and we only limit it to talking about Ukraine. There is an act of war being fought right now, today, inside of Russia. So help me get the truth to more people about what's really going on in this war. A war that Russia started, but is now losing. A war where we see that Ukraine is winning. All I ask you to do is subscribe to this channel, like this video, share it with others, and consider becoming a channel member today. Consider this. The Tomahawks provide an incredible amount of precision. And now that it seems the United States will likely be proceeding with its plan to give Ukraine Tomahawk missiles, that's a very big deal. Now, the missile itself is not new. It's been around since 1983. However, the statistics it has are pretty impressive. They can go 1,600 kilometers or 1,000 miles. They can carry a warhead of 450 kilograms or 1,000 pounds. But what makes it very cool and very interesting is how low it flies to the earth. It's not high up. It's hard to shoot down. It cuts right through the defenses that Russia has. Though we don't yet know the quantities that Ukraine will receive, we know that it looks like it'll be soon. So right now, with this ability to strike deep inside of Russia with great precision, Russia's going to face more and more problems. At this point, we can imagine that there's going to be more and more of these attacks that are going to make Russia vulnerable. And that vulnerability does matter because it changes Moscow's options. It decreases Moscow's budgets. And the timelines for Russia will have to be adjusted. And the calculus for this war has been turned totally upside down. Consider this. The Engels 2 bomber base, it is within range of Tomahawk missiles. By degrading the Engels 2, that will reduce Russia's ability to carry out attacks on Ukraine. But it also reduces Russia's total readiness as a military. When it's going to have to fly from further away, no longer keep its airplanes at Engels 2, that means that Russia will have to spend more money on fuel. But as you've noticed, there's not a lot of fuel right now inside of Russia. In Ryazan and Yaroslavl, the refineries there were attacked. Now that they were attacked, there is less crude that's becoming diesel or aviation fuel or gasoline. So when those refineries go offline, there's not necessarily just another supply of it. Russia doesn't have an endless supply of refineries. In fact, it's running out of them. But there's something else very cool going on. and it is almost never mentioned in the press. And that's the fact that Ukraine is fighting very wisely. Because it's not just the refineries themselves, but going after things like the chemical factories where the specific chemicals needed in refining are made. Incredibly enough, Russia, thanks to its Soviet legacy, has many factories that are one of a kind in an entire country. They don't have endless factories making the chemicals they need to refine oil. And the most incredible part, many of those factories are within range of Ukraine. That means that if Ukraine were to take them offline, there's no more refining of oil anywhere else inside of Russia. But Ukraine is also going after Russia's ability to wage war, going after things such as the Novorossiysk export terminal. That export terminal is important, not just because the Black Sea Fleet's been hiding there recently, but because that is from where they export things like oil. Now, if the export oil is going down and they won't make as much money, that means that procuring more parts, more engines, more electronics, more weaponry will become more complicated. Moscow's ability to finance repairs and sustain this war is simply in decline. There's no other way to justify what is occurring. Look at the attacks in Rostov. Look at the attacks on the command nodes there. Look at the attacks at the airfields in Kursk. The attacks on the depots in Belgorod. Time and again, Ukraine is taking this war to Russia. And right now, Russia is struggling to coordinate. How can it make everything work together if there's insufficient parts, insufficient people, insufficient money to continue fighting? For Russia to have an offensive at this point, it's going to be very challenging. All of their various strengths have become weakened. But going ahead, there's something else very interesting going on, and it's very fun. That's the fact that Russia's economy is doing so badly that the people in Russia are seeing it. They are seeing that their country simply cannot keep it going. Everything is unraveling. Everything in Russia is getting more expensive. When there's scarcity of fuel, it means fuel gets more expensive. And since most everything gets delivered by truck or by train, the trains use diesel and the trucks do as well. That means that deliveries get more expensive. Grocery stores, the cost goes up. You go to another store to buy clothes and the cost goes up. You go to another store to buy dog food and the cost goes up. Wherever you go, the cost goes up. And the average person feels that. They feel the bite of that. Russia, incredibly, a country of 140 million people, has an unemployment rate of about 2%. Now, at first, you might think that's a good sign, but it's not. That's a very bad sign. When you have such tremendously low unemployment, that's a sign of high inflation. And that's probably very clear when you look at the fact that about half of Russians are looking for a second job. It's because their current job, their main job, their day job, it simply doesn't give them enough capital to survive. Their money has less and less value, and so they're forced to go out and look for second jobs. Now, there's something else going on inside of Russia that's very important. Moscow today, due to the fact that it has less money, it's in triage, there's more political strain. There's more strain in the banking sector. And the elites in Russia want their money. They're not very excited to hear that the government wants to continue this war, a war they cannot afford, because the Russian government will find money, but it's going to have to be stealing it from their elites. And that creates a new dimension. That creates a dimension where there's serious political risk for the Putin regime, one where they could very well be up against the elites who make the country run. But for the common people, the banks in Russia don't want to give them their money. We've already seen that. The banks don't have enough money to both supply the military, to supply the defense contractors, and also, at the same time, give you your money back. They can't do that. They keep the money in the bank so that they can fund this war. So why would Russians trust the banks? The fact is, they don't. And that is also bad for Russia. But Ukraine today is doing a lot of things. It's innovative. It's smart. It's ahead of its times. Ukraine is always developing new solutions. And in fact, for those who are interested in this, I'll mention now, there's an organization, Technology United for Ukraine, that is allowing people to volunteer their expertise. So if you come from a technical background, a science background, and want to help Ukraine to develop drones or to develop other ways that it can use technology to advance, whether it's radio, whether it's communications, whether it's chemistry, whatever it is. If it comes back to the sciences and you wish to use that background to help Ukraine, you can donate your experience. I will put a link in the first comment below, where also I'll put a link to donate for those who would like to help Ukraine get life-saving drones. But right now, this organization is doing amazing things with engineers, doing amazing things with nanotechnology, doing amazing things that are going to make Ukraine win. So let's continue though. What Ukraine has done recently with the Flamingo is an example of that. The Flamingo is simply fascinating. The Flamingo gives Ukraine the mass that the Tomahawk simply cannot. So if the Flamingo can fly 3,000 kilometers, 1,800 miles, if it can carry a payload of 1,150 kilograms or 2,500 pounds, that's quite impressive. The payload exceeds by more than double that of the Tomahawks. Ukraine is hoping to be able to produce about 200 per month, and it's hoping to get even more produced by the beginning of next year. By producing such high quantities of this, it means that the Flamingo will paralyze Russia's ability to continue operating as a normal country. And the Tomahawks will be very useful to make sure that recovery is not possible. All these things are working together. Ukraine is working intelligently, smart. It knows how to win. It knows how to inflict damage, not like Russia. Russia attacks hospitals. It attacks schools. And it doesn't care. It likes to see humans suffer. Ukraine is fighting for freedom. Ukraine today is doing something that the Russians would never be able to do. To have a citizenry who is keen to see it win, that cares about the outcome. A citizenry who is sacrificing a great deal for the freedom of their nation. But that's why when we see these new weapons come out, we can be sure the Ukrainians are using them wisely, judiciously. They are making sure that they attack exactly what is necessary to bring the downfall of Putin regime. They're not aiming to simply attack within Russia, but to make sure that they are destroying Russia's ability to wage war. The fuel scarcity today in Russia, though, is something that is definitely contributing to that. It's compounding all the other problems. Russia already faces massive shortages, and those shortages are making the implementation of their strategies, their plans, nearly impossible. And it's not being made any better by the internal sabotage. That's certainly accelerating the decay. The infighting that we see in Russia is simply out of control. The troops lack oil and they lack gasoline. They lack diesel. They lack jet fuel. But that's the interesting part. All of this lack, it's not just because of the Ukrainian drone strikes. It's because of the sabotage. The FSB is actively working against the Russian military. And the people that be in charge of things, like making sure there's enough of any given material, those are the people that do logistics. They're the people that do acquisitions. And out of the 17 generals that the FSB has arrested from the Russian military just in the past couple of years, 15 of those 17 were in the field of logistics and acquisitions. Now, of course, the FSB is interested in cleaning out those areas because they want to seize those rackets. They want to expand their empire. But at the same time, they're cutting off the arteries of the military. Today, the security service is really more interested in figuring out how it can tax logistics. Frontline units, therefore, are paying for this in time and in blood. Russia is doing everything it can to make sure that it collapses. We see what happened in 1917. The bread shortages, the rail breakdown. Look at the strikes that they created. State authority, though, across Russia is collapsing. It is falling apart. Orders at some point stop being obeyed. We saw that in 1989. The Soviet coal miners, they began to strike. And that was one of the major signals of systemic weakness. By later, in 1991, we already saw the empty shelves across the Soviet Union. Industry and transport began to falter, loyalty began to fade, and across the country, people could not even do simple things. Russia had to choose between guns and butter, and it chose guns. Today, it is repeating that exact same error. That decision is simply unaffordable. Ukraine's strategy is to make sure that Russia repeats these mistakes. It's forced to choose. At every moment, it can do what is going to be good for its country, to be good for its national stability, or to continue prosecuting this war. And so far, they have chosen to prosecute this war. So no matter what happens next, there's something that's very clear that we are all seeing. And that is, every day, we are yet one day closer to the end of the Putin regime. Thank you for watching. Please like this video, subscribe to this channel, send the video to others, post it on social media, and consider becoming a channel member today. As always, thank you for supporting Ukraine.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement.
Everything I do so instinctive and so passionate. Every word I move so descriptive like an adjective. I got a vendetta against people who patented being negative when you should be getting after it. I got facts over tracks, this and that. Spitting slow, spitting fast. I could roast, I could gas. Think I'm okay at last, but I don't know if that can erase all the past. And the pettiness, a reflection of the emptiness. Hilarious, you think you're worth my time, you're delirious. Mysterious, because you hide behind a fake exterior. Inferior, you know I'll always be a bit superior. Get off of me, this ain't no humble brag. I want you to hear words, you can say them back. I want you to feel free from the chains at last.